Hi, this video is on Bile Em Cabbage Down number 89 from the Essential Elements book, and this is specifically a video on how to improvise with this tune. I'm not going to go over how to play the tune. I do that in another video. You can check the description if you would like to find that one. Bile Em Cabbage Down is a traditional bluegrass tune, and bluegrass is an improvised style of music. So if you're going to really be playing this tune, then you should learn how to make up variations on it, and that's what we're going to be going over here, some strategies for that. I'm not going to do a full performance of the actual tune. You can check out the other video, and there's one in there. There is, however, a practice track at the end of this video that has Bile Em Cabbage Down an accompaniment bit, and you can watch that video, skip to the end, and you can use that to practice along. I also have a video in here demonstrating some basic improv techniques, and we'll go over that here in a little while. All right, so the first thing is we are just going to play through the tune on Bile Em Cabbage Down. I hope you have your instrument with you. If you don't, you may want to pause the video, go get it. I'm going to set the metronome to 96, and we're just going to play through the tune. We're going to take the repeat, so we'll play the basic melody twice. 1, 2, 3. All right, now this is going to be basic. This isn't advanced improvisation. These are just some strategies to help get you started. Now, the first thing you need to notice is that there's only 4 notes in Bile Em Cabbage Down, and each note pretty much lasts for an entire measure. You have a measure of F, a measure of G, you go back to a measure of F, a measure of E, back to a measure of F, to a measure of G, and then this very last measure is the only one that's a little bit different. Half a measure of F, half a measure of E, and then a measure of D to end it out. If you use those things as touchstones, that's the way that you're going to be able to really get started on improvising variations. And think about improvising not so much as making up something brand new, although it can be that. That's not a good place to start. Think of it as making variations on the existing melody. So if you're playing Bile Em Cabbage Down, I'm not worried about making up something brand new. I'm thinking more about making variations on Bile Em Cabbage Down. And a great way to do that is just by using the notes of the existing melody. Think about this. If you start every measure on the note that measure starts in the song, and after that go ahead and play other things, then you're going to end up sounding kind of like the melody. Now the next thing is that consider Bile Em Cabbage Down, like we said, only has 4 notes in it. You don't need any more than those 4 notes. You can make an effective improvisation by using D, E, F, and G, and not even worrying about any other note. All right, so I'm going to cut over to a video of me doing an improvisation on this, and it goes 6 times through the tune. And the practice video that's at the end also goes the same 6 times through the tune. This is what I want you to notice. Level 1 is I'm just making up a rhythmic variation, right? So for instance, we've got a measure of F, a measure of G, a measure of F, a measure of E. I'll just go through that first half of the tune. Instead of that rhythm, I'm just going to use the same notes, but I'm going to make up my own rhythms. For instance, 1, 2, 3. I've just improvised On Bile Em Cabbage Down, I've used the same notes in the same order, but I've just made up a new rhythm to go there. That's a great place to start if this is your first try at improvising something. All right? The next thing, and as I go through my 6 times, each time through I get just a little bit more complicated. The second time through, instead of just staying on one note, I'm going to change notes a little bit. But I'm only going to go away one note and come back a note. So for instance, if I'm on the F measure, I may add a G in there and then come back to an F. I may add an E in there and come back to an F. If I'm on the E measure, or if I'm on the G measure, I'll go back and forth. I might add some Fs. I'm not going to worry about the A. If you want to add in A's, you can, but for now, like I said, you really only need 4 notes, right? So for the G measure, G's and F's. Back to F's, I'll use some G's, I'll use some E's, back to E, and I'll use D's, and I'll use some F's. And I'll just play a couple of measures to give you an example of that. And 1, 2, 3. All right, and I went 2 times through that time just because it's a little bit different, and I mixed that up with some rhythmic variations. And again, these aren't supposed to be great improvisations. I'm just trying to go over some steps to get started, because if you want to be good at improvising, this is true of a lot of things, you have to start out as being bad at improvising, and the more you practice it, you get better and better and better, and you can get past just those 4 notes, and you can do more interesting stuff. So that's level 2, is just use the notes next to each other. Level 3 would be to add in some skipped notes. So I'm still doing rhythmic variation. I'm using different notes, but instead of just staying next door, I'm going to do a couple of skips. And 1, 2, 3. Just for example, and I wouldn't call that a great improvisation, but it's a place to start. Like, where do you pick notes? I'm using the note of the measure as my main note. I start on it, and then I skip notes around it, right? The next level is to just make some things maybe a little bit faster. I'm going to add in some slurs, right? So if you're good at doing your slurs already, then that can give you some extra material to work with. And 1, 2, 3. Just for instance, there's just different things you can do. But I'm not taking anything beyond just those 4 notes. I'm keeping it simple, and I'm just kind of tootling around, right? As the next level, and there's something you find in bluegrass that's a lot of bluegrass players will use a perpetual motion sort of style, which means that the rhythm really just moves. They'll kind of keep it moving, right? So far, I've been a lot of times just sticking 1, 2, and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. And if you just use that rhythm, you're not going to go wrong. But I'm going to just add a bunch of extra notes, only these 4. I'm going to start each measure on the note that it goes with, and I'm going to do a slur and then 2 separate notes. And so that I've got steady 8th notes, but even though my bow is going to go down and up and So this is getting to the perpetual motion style that a lot of bluegrass players will use. 1, 2, 3. Now Now that one I'd say is the first one of these little improv demonstrations that I think sounded kind of bluegrassy, right? Because I was using that perpetual motion style, but it'll take you a little bit to build up to that. What I want you to notice is that every measure started with the note that went with that measure. I've used that note as the center of that measure and just kind of played around it. And I never used any more than just those 4 notes. For this tune, you can put together a pretty effective improvisation with just D, E, F sharp, and G. As you get more advanced, go ahead and add in the rest of the D scale. Now, I do want to point out that for Bile Em Cabbage Down, it's not a D major scale, really. It's a D mixolydian scale. So that means if you're going to experiment with your higher notes, when you get onto that A string, use a C natural instead of a C sharp, and it's going to make it sound a little bit more right. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to cut to a video of me going through 6 times, and I'm just going to do an improvisation. And each time through, I'm going to take it up a level. First time is just rhythm. Second time, I'll use neighbor notes. Third time, I'll do a couple of skips. Fourth time, my rhythm gets a little bit more complicated. I start adding in some slurs until by the sixth time, I'm doing that perpetual motion style. So let's go ahead and cut over to that now. 1, 2, 3. Alright, so I hope you saw from that at least a good example of how you can approach improvising to Bile Em Cabbage Down. Like I said, that's not intended to be great improvising. It's really just a demonstration to help give you some ideas just to get you started, because at some point you have to get started, and from there you take a journey towards improving. I hope you enjoyed this video, that you found it helpful. If you found this video helpful, please like the video, subscribe to my channel. And now, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to cut over to a video of just the accompaniment. It's taken out the improvisation, and this is for you to practice. It goes 6 times through, and just take note of what time it starts, and when it's done, just go back to the beginning of it, try again, try again, try again. If you're ready to go a little faster, you go down to the speed control, make it a little bit faster. If you need to go a little slower, make it a little bit slower. Do what you need to do, and above all, remember, keep practicing. 1, 2, 3.